Happy Monday. Today we're doing chapters 16 and 17 of James and the Giant Peach by Roald Dahl. As always, keep an eye out, or an ear out in this case, for any interesting words that you might hear, and let me know about them. Alright, let's get started. Chapter 16. And now the peach had broken out of the garden and was over the edge of the hill, rolling and bouncing down the steep slope at a terrific pace. Faster and faster and faster it went, and the crowds of people who were climbing up the hill suddenly caught sight of this terrible monster plunging down upon them, and they screamed and scattered to the right and left as it went hurtling by. At the bottom of the hill it charged across the road, knocking over a telegraph pole and flattening 2 parked automobiles as it went by. Then it rushed madly across about 20 fields, breaking down all the fences and hedges in its path. It went right through the middle of a herd of fine Jersey cows, and then through a flock of sheep, and then through a paddock full of horses, and then through a yard full of pigs, and soon the whole countryside was a seething mass of panic-stricken animals stampeding in all directions. The peach was still going at a tremendous speed with no sign of slowing down, and about a mile farther on it came to a village. Down the main street of the village it rolled, with people leaping frantically out of its path right and left, and at the end of the street it went crashing right through the wall of an enormous building and out the other side, leaving 2 gaping round holes in the brickwork. This building happened to be a famous factory where they made chocolate, and almost at once a great river of warm melted chocolate came pouring out of the holes in the factory wall. A minute later, this brown, sticky mess was flowing through every street in the village, oozing under the doors of houses and into people's shops and gardens. Children were wading in it up to their knees, and some were even trying to swim in it, and all of them were sucking it into their mouths in great greedy gulps and shrieking with joy. But the peach rushed across the countryside, on and on and on, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. Cowsheds, stables, pigsties, barns, bungalows, hayricks, anything that got in its way went toppling over like a ninepin. An old man sitting quietly beside a stream had his fishing rod whisked out of his hands as it went by, dashing, and a woman called Daisy Entwhistle was standing so close to it as it passed that she had the skin taken off the tip of her nose. Would it ever stop? Why should it? A round object will always keep on rolling as long as it is on a downhill slope, and in this case the land sloped downhill all the way until it reached the ocean, the same ocean that James had begged his aunts to be allowed to visit the day before. Well, perhaps he was going to visit it now. The peach was rushing closer and closer to it every second, and closer also to the towering white cliffs that came first. These cliffs were the most famous in the whole of England, and they were hundreds of feet high. Below them the sea is deep and cold and hungry. Many ships have been swallowed up and lost forever on this part of the coast, and all the men who were in them as well. The peach was now only 100 yards away from the cliff, now 50, now 20, now 10, now 5, and when it reached the edge of the cliff it seemed to leap out into the sky and hang there suspended for a few seconds, still turning over and over in the air. And then it began to fall. Down, 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 smack. It hit the water with a colossal splash and sank like a stone. But a few seconds later, it came up again, and this time it stayed, floating serenely on top of the water. Chapter 17. At this moment, the scene inside the peach itself was one of indescribable chaos. James Henry Trotter was lying bruised and battered on the floor of the room amongst a mass of tangled centipede and earthworm and spider and ladybug and glowworm and old green grasshopper. In the whole history of the world, no travelers had ever had a more terrible journey than these unfortunate creatures. It had started out well with much laughing and shouting, and for the first few seconds, as the peach had begun to roll slowly forward, nobody had minded being tumbled about a little bit. And when it went bump, and Centipede shouted, "That was Aunt Sponge," and then bump again, "That was Aunt Spiker," there had been a tremendous burst of cheering all around. But as soon as the peach rolled out of the garden and began to go down the steep hill, rushing and plunging and bounding madly downward, Then the whole thing became a nightmare. James found himself being flung up against the ceiling, then back onto the floor, then sideways against the wall, then up onto the ceiling again, and up and down and back and forth and round, and at the same time, all the other creatures were flying through the air in every direction, and so were the chairs and the sofa, not to mention the 42 boots belonging to the centipede. Everything and all of them were being rattled around like peas inside an enormous rattle that was being rattled by a mad giant who refused to stop. To make it worse, something went wrong with the glowworm's lighting system, and the room was in a pitchy darkness. There were screams and yells and curses and cries of pain, and everything kept going round and round. And once James made a frantic grab at some thick bars sticking out from the wall, only to find they were a couple of the centipede's legs. "Let go, you idiot!" shouted the centipede, kicking himself free, and James was promptly flung across the room into the old green grasshopper's horny lap. Twice he got tangled up in Miss Spider's legs, a horrid business, and toward the end the poor earthworm, who was cracking himself like a whip every time he flew through the air, from one side of the room to the other, coiled himself around James's body in a panic and refused to unwind. Oh, it was a frantic and terrible trip. But it was all over now, and the room was suddenly very still and quiet. Everybody was beginning slowly and painfully to disentangle himself from everybody else. "Let's have some light," shouted the centipede. "Yes," they cried, "light, give us some light." "I'm trying," answered the poor glowworm. "I'm doing my best. Please be patient." They all waited in silence. Then a giant greenish light began to glimmer out of the glowworm's tail, and this gradually became stronger and stronger until it was anyway enough to see by. "Some great journey," the centipede said, limping across the room. "I shall never be the same again," murmured the earthworm. "Nor I," said the ladybug. "It's taken years off my life." "But, dear friends," cried the old green grasshopper, trying to be cheerful, "we are there." "Where?" they asked. "Where? Where is there?" "I don't know," the old green grasshopper said, "but I bet it's somewhere good." "We are probably at the bottom of a coal mine," the earthworm said gloomily. "We certainly went down and down and down very suddenly at the last moment. I felt it in my stomach. I still feel it." "Perhaps we are in the middle of a beautiful country full of songs and music," the old green grasshopper said. "Or near the shore," said James eagerly, "with lots of other children down on the sand for me to play with." "Pardon me," murmured the ladybug, turning a trifle pale, "but am I wrong in thinking that we seem to be bobbing up and down?" "Bobbing up and down!" they cried. "What on earth do you mean?" "You're still giddy from the journey," the old green grasshopper told her. "You'll get over it in a minute. Is everybody ready to go upstairs now and take a look around?" "Yes, yes," they chorused. "Come on, let's go." I refuse to show myself out of doors in my bare feet," the centipede said. "I gotta get my boots on again first." "For heaven's sake, let's not go through all that nonsense again," the earthworm said. "Let's all lend the centipede a hand and get it over with," the ladybug said. "Come on." So they did, all except Miss Spider, who set about weaving a long rope ladder that would reach from the floor up to a hole in the ceiling. The old green grasshopper had wisely said that they must not risk going out of the side entrance when they didn't know where they were, but must first of all go up onto the top of the peach and have a look around. So half an hour later, when the rope ladder had been finished and hung, and the 42nd boot had been laced neatly onto the centipede's 42nd foot, they were all ready to go out. Amidst mounting excitement and shouts of, "Here we go, boys, the promised land! I can't wait to see it," the whole company climbed up the ladder, one by one, and disappeared into a dark, soggy tunnel in the ceiling that went steeply, almost vertically upward. So that was chapter 16 and 17 of James and the Giant Peach. What I would like you to do for a comprehension question is let me know, what do you think all the friends and everyone are going to see as they exit the top of the peach through Miss Spider's rope ladder? You can even draw a picture and show it to me if you want. I'll see you tomorrow.